how to construct an Upper Manhattan Park Place style condominium for the blue-black orchard mason bees. Step 1. Find a suitable block of wood. Precisely measure it from side to side, about 12 inches by 12 inches by whatever size thickness your cookie tree cut was. Give or take an inch. They don't come with their measuring tapes, so they'll be happy. Step 2. Pick the two sides of the block that you determine you want to face in the southeast directions, and draw some nice horizontal lines and drill a series of holes. I started with 1/4 inch, but I want more female bees to come out than males, so I'm going to drill them to 5/16 inch. I started drilling all the holes at 1.5 inches so that I could get my pattern down, and now I'm going back and drilling the ones in between at 3/4 inch, which is recommended. I also chose to make the lines from one side to the other off a little bit so that the holes in the corners don't intersect down in the wood, because the little girls that are hatching way on the inside don't like company, and their mothers want to keep them separate so the holes can't interfere. Once you've decided which part of the block condominium is going to be the top and the bottom, flip it so that the bottom is up and drill a nice big 1-inch hole somewhere close to the center line. Give it 1 inch or 2. A block this size isn't going to move and it's not going to sway in the breeze, so close is good enough. Well, I've been at this for a couple of hours now, and one side is almost complete. There's room there for a lot of young bees to be hatched, but you may want to take a break every few minutes. Drilling into solid oak is a little tough on the wrist and the big thumb. Well, all the holes have now been drilled to 1/4 inch. I'm going to use them as pilots. I'm going to get the bit out for 5/16, which is recommended so that we'll have more female bees than male bees. We'll drill them all out and then see how she looks. Well, here it is, looking from the corner, showing the bottom with a 1-inch hole drilled in the center more or less, and all the holes drilled on the what's going to be the south side, which is up right now, and the east side, which is to the right. And just to make sure that if any of my new habitants come from up north, meaning Canada, and I'm in southern New England, I wrote it right there so they can read it. 5/16 equals 8 millimeters, so it's the right size for them too. That's all. Now I got to find a pole to put it on, because I want it near my garden, between my garden and the pond where there's lots of mud, and there's no trees or sheds over there, so I need to get a pole. That'll be next. Well, rather than cut down a fresh cedar tree, which would tend to keep wildlife away because of the scent, I've chosen this cedar pole, which has been here at the edge of my garden for several years and has lost most of its smell, and it just serves to swing this old gate on, which we open and close on occasion, so we wouldn't be bothering the inhabitants of the nest. So what I'm going to do is climb up in the back of my old pickup here, and since the top of the pole is at 6 feet, I'm going to take about 6 inches and 8 inches off the top and drill a hole right in the center, about 1 inch in diameter, and put a pin in it that we can set the house on, which has the 1-inch hole drilled in the bottom. Okay, let the operation begin. Okay, so much for creating a nice surface for the condominium. Now I'll take you upstairs and see what it looks like from up in the air. Well, here's what it looks like from at about 5.5 feet from the ground. And the reason I picked this pole is, like I said, it was at the corner of my garden. It's actually at the northwest corner. And that's my garden in that direction. And then if you look to the south, from east to south, you'll see that we're right on the edge of a nice big pond, and it's not that far away for the bees to get mud. So we'll be right back and get a drill and put a 1-inch hole down through there. That's the next phase. Okay, we've got just about the center of this pole. We're going to be drilling down as far as this bit will go. Well, that's about the end of the battery, but I've finished the full depth of the bit, so that's probably going to do it. Boy, it still smells good too. What I'm doing now is I'm just doing an over check on the depth of the 1-inch hole that I drilled in the bottom of the house for the mason bees, and the depth is about 4.5 inches. So now I'm going to measure 4 inches on a piece of 1-inch pipe so that I know when I drive it in there I've got good penetration and it'll really support the house on the top of the cedar pole. And there's the yellow mark at 4 inches, and there it goes right into the bottom of the house. So I know I've got good penetration, leaving a 1/2 inch to spare, because I want the base of the bee house to sit right on the cedar pole. So now I'm going to measure the actual depth of the hole in the cedar pole and custom cut the pipe so that it has a 1/2 inch to play. And I'll know I got about 4 inches of pipe into the house and into the pole. So even though I used the same bit drilling this hole in the pole, I'm going to take a measurement because the battery got weak and I didn't get quite as deep as I did on the house itself. So I'm at 4 inches. So I'm going to cut that piece of pipe at 3.5. And that'll give me a 1/2 inch play on each end, but it'll really keep that house secure on this pole, because that's a big pole. Look how long that is. That's 10.5 inches, about around 11 this direction. That's going to be a pretty secure foundation, and it weighs about 30 pounds. I'm not worried about the wind moving it. So what I've done is I've put the 1-inch galvanized pipe in the bottom of the beehive house, and I left it sticking out 3.5 inches. Then I've taken the piece I cut off and I took 2 marker spots, one at 3 inches and one at 4 inches. And there's the 3-inch mark, and it sets there nicely, and if I wiggle it and tap on it, it'll actually go down to that 4-inch mark. There we go. It'll drop down to just about the 4-inch mark. So that means the 3.5 inches sticking out of the bottom of the bee nest, the block should be sitting on the full top surface of the post. And now we're going to give it a shot, see what it looks like. Well, here's something I'm going to do for just as a precaution. Even though we're still in the dead of winter here in Connecticut, this winter of 2011-12 has barely touched us, and if you can see the water down there, there's only a little skimming of ice on it. It's almost like a spring day. So since I cut that cedar, I can smell it now, even though it's an old pole. I'm going to put a light coating of undercoat on it to try to deaden it, if I can get the undercoat to work a little. That way there, by the time the bees show up, it should be well covered and not smell too bad to them. There we go. Cover that cedar smell right up here in February, and by the time the bees show up, they shouldn't be aware of any odors to them. Plus the log home will be sitting right on top of the cedar. Put some down in the hole. Yeah, that should do. Now we'll put their house up and see what it looks like. Nice and undercoated. And there you have it, a purple orchard Mason Bees custom upper society condominium, and I am officially open for business. And here it is in its natural setting. This side facing south, this side to the east. It's at the northwest of my garden, and maybe I'll get some pears this year too. I hope they like it. We're now at one of the last days of summer 2012, and here's a picture of my Orchard Mason beehive that I put up real early this season. And we're looking at the easternmost exposure, which is close to due east. It's right in the bright sun. It's fairly early in the morning. And there are approximately 8 used holes on the eastern side, which means some young female Orchard Mason bees found it and liked it and have filled those holes with eggs. And now to look at the southern exposure, it's dark because the sun hasn't hit this side yet, But on the eastern exposure, there's only 8 holes where I can see mud at the end. And on the southern exposure, there are 20. They seem to like the outer holes the best, but there's 20 on the south side, which is a good sign. And my friend Ned Farrell from Be Happy said this is a real good sign and that I should have some early spring pollinators next year, right at the end of my garden. And of course, as more hatch out of this hive, more of the young females will come back to lay eggs in the holes next year. So I feel pretty successful.